Good morning, everyone. 2 Corinthians 4, verse 12. So then, death is working in us, but life in you. John Bunyan was a poor man who lived in England in the mid-1600s. He had been gloriously saved himself and always wanted to speak to people about his Saviour, even though in those days it was forbidden to preach if you were not a Church of England minister. He had a great burden for people, so he refused to be silent. He was arrested and he spent many years in Bedford prison. He suffered there and his wife and family suffered without him. So Bunyan knew a good deal about lockdown. But he said of prison that when they had put him in jail, they had locked the truth in with him. He described his jail as a hill from where we plainly see beyond this world and are fed by eternal things. To be sure, he had some struggles, but he understood that when men engage with God, they find true courage as they first conquer their own hearts, all worldly fears, and then also the devil's fiery darts. And so he writes that in the main, he maintained his inner peace. One person affected by Bunyan's life said, "His soul dwells beyond the measure of his cell. His spirit has no sense of bondage. Chainless and swift, he has soared to the delectable mountains." So what was his secret? He writes, "The Lord did also lead me into the mystery of union with the Son of God, that I was joined to him, that I was flesh of his flesh and bone of his bone. For if he and I were one, then his righteousness was mine, his merits mine, his victory also mine. Now I could see myself in heaven and on earth at once." There were some bad days. Still in prison, he received a message that his blind daughter Mary was dying. Full of the love of God herself, she had visited a man who was dying from smallpox to bring him words of comfort. Astonishingly, this man had been an enemy and persecutor of her own father. She caught the infection there from which she died. When Bunyan heard, he groaned, "Would I were there now! Oh, to look upon her for one little moment! My poor afflicted one, my heart bleeds for thee. Oh, my child, strangers are laying thee in the earth, and I don't drop a tear upon the coffin. Woe is me, the Lord deals strangely." The authorities, and the devil it seems, had sought to silence Bunyan, but in prison he wrote some books. One of them, Pilgrim's Progress, was inspired by a dream. It is a story that describes so clearly that there is only one way of salvation, through Jesus Christ and his atoning death. That book, which has now been translated into 200 languages, has been read by millions over the last 350 years, both old and young alike. It has been one of the best-selling books of all time and has been described as the second most influential Christian book after the Bible. Bunyan, and God through Bunyan, was not silenced. On the contrary, death worked in John Bunyan so that life would come to others. Like the Apostle Paul, Bunyan had done so much of his preaching from a prison cell. This is our challenge for today. May the Lord help us to be willing to follow him into death so that we might be ministers of life to others. Amen. Have a good day.